Welcome to the Funnel Reboot Podcast, brought to you by Marketing What's New. Let's get into today's show.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot. Today, we're going to see what's wrong with thinking that your customer's always right. Before I do that, I want to remind you that you should update your site's analytics before the universal version of Google Analytics goes away. Let's get to today's show. Our guest says that marketing has a problem. In his words, I think there's an over-reliance on people's opinions at the expense of creating a vision and sticking with it. That's from his book, and in it he claims that this hurts our ability to build brands that get strong traction. Today's guest is a published author, and the book's title is his plea to marketers. The book's name is Stop Listening to the Customer, Try Hearing Your Brand Instead. Our guest is the founder of Thinkerbell, an agency that creates measured magic. It was ranked 2021's #1 creative agency in the world by industry publication BestAds. He is one of Australia's leading consumer psychologists. He's also a regular panelist on Australian TV. He is the creator of the idea behind the WARC World Innovation Prize. He's winner of both the Cannes Gold Lion and Gold Effie Awards, and has created an unconference where ideas meet influence, and a social agency called Decade of Action. And he's also the co-host of a podcast for marketers called Black T-Shirts. Let's go listen to Adam Ferrier. By the way, special props go to your assistant for helping us coordinate.
Yeah, she's unreal. And thanks for saying that. That's good. It's always nice to hear people say that. Hey, what kind of listeners do you get? What kind of numbers do you get for your podcast?
I'm early days, Adam. So I'm total downloads about 12,000. And so I would say a typical episode, we kind of get to 100 in, maybe first 45 days time. And then the magic of the long tail takes us from there. So
keep on going. That's great. That's good.
That is, and earning one listener at a time. My secret is no secret.
All right, let's go for it.
All right, so I'll give you a countdown, and we're just gonna start right in with the title and your probably most notable statement, maybe a bit provocative about marketing. So we'll start there, and then we'll just take it where it leads. Here we go. I'm really glad to have on Adam Ferrier. Welcome to Funnel Reboot, Adam.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you. And where are you joining us from?
I'm in Melbourne, Australia at the moment, and it's a cloudy day. It's 8 a.m. and I'm just getting ready to do my thing.
You sure are. And, everybody else has an accent, right? We ourselves don't. So, for me at least, I'll just enjoy listening to this Australian accent. So let's get right into the book that you wrote. Would you mind telling us the name of it?
Sure. The book, this is my second book. It's called Stop Listening to the Customer, Try Hearing Your Brand Instead. And I did write a lot of it during lockdown, and Melbourne was the lockdown city of the world. So we had 262 days over 2 years of hardcore lockdown, which gave me plenty of writing time.
Yes, and it gave you time also to say something that you really wanted to get off your chest. The title sums it up very nicely. But, let's delve into where you see problems with people who are going the direction of the customer is everything, the customer is always right, the customer will direct everything that we do. Where do you see them falling off the rails?
Yeah, like any kind of thought, it doesn't just come to you overnight. It kind of coalesces and builds and builds and builds. Many years ago, Malcolm Gladwell was coming to town, and I organised a dinner with Malcolm and about 10 other 10 CMOs in Australia, and we had a beautiful dinner at this lovely restaurant. And halfway through dinner, the CMO of Coke at the time said to Malcolm, "Malcolm, what do you think people really want? What do they really want from Coca-Cola?" And Malcolm just just had a kind of a deadened look on his face for a bit, paused, and then after a while he said, "I think they just want to be left alone." And that really stayed with me, right? Like, if you ask the consumer what they want, they'll say they want to be left alone. They don't want more advertising. They don't want to spend more time on your website. They don't want to spend more time playing with the app. They don't want to be addicted to your product. And so that stayed with me. Then I do a lot of public speaking, and I started to get really annoyed because the first value the corporation always had was, we're customer obsessed. Here, we're customer obsessed. I heard this over and over again, and I'll just start to call it out a little bit and say, really? So if you're customer obsessed, would you be doing this? Would your business be in business at all? And so I think I always see brands as kind of a servant of business strategy. So you have a business that has a strategy, and the brands help them get there. And that should be the main focus of any brand. Is at the end is profitability. We can talk about purpose versus profit, or purpose and profit as another conversation. It's a slightly different chat. But in order to build a brand, you need to understand and listen to the customer in order to make that brand grow. But that's where the relationship starts with the brand and then the customer, not the other way around. And so the book is really just a plea, if you like, to stop listening to the customer just for a little bit. Hear what your brand has to say, hear your brand's voice, hear what your brand's strengths are, then work out how to build that and how to communicate that. And then once you understand that, you got your head around that, then start listening to the customer and trying to meet their needs with what you've got.
Yeah. So there's an aspect I think that looks backward here, that if anyone is working for a brand, this would help them see what you're saying. If they think back, maybe their founder is still around, but even if not, if they can learn, there seems to be a moment in every brand's founding story where an individual or a small group kind of metaphorically slapped their fist on a desk and said, okay, there has to be a better way. The customer here, or maybe they were the customer, says, not putting up with this anymore. We're going to make it right. And I think that's the germ, the kernel of where that brand idea enters. And of course, to survive, customers have to be found. But as you say, this is the order that it should happen in. And you have to tap into that early moment to remind yourself that the brand is the first part of the equation.
Yeah, it could be an early moment. It could be a moment that happened yesterday. It could be a moment that you predict is going to happen in a year's time. But it's
yes.
So I do take the point that often the truth of the brand lies in its history somewhere, whether it's its foundation story or it's a zig or it's a zag that happened along the way, some kind of way of really expressing what the brand stood for. So, like we take Avis, we're number 2 and we try harder back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
That was an expression born out of being number 2 in the marketplace, but what that really tried to communicate was service quality right through the business. And so now, if you think about Avis, it's about, trying to recreate good service, I guess.
Right. And they were going to die on that hill.
That's right. And so the answers are often in the history pages. It could be yesterday, it could be at the foundation. But I wouldn't want to limit ourselves to that, because I'm not in the business of creating more Kodak moments either.
So it's more of a symbiosis. Customer led, yes, but why not brand led too?
No, not customer led, brand led.
First with brand led, and you
Yeah.
talk about how if we
So
make
if
so
you
much
look
of a deal on customer experience, why don't we make more of a deal about brand experience,
yeah,
right? BX, not CX.
that's right. And so we say BX before EX before CX, brand experience before employee experience before customer experience. Just hear me out on this for a little bit, right?
Sure.
The more you listen to the customer, the more so no customer gives a damn about your brand. They don't care about your brand at all. And what they care about for a fleeting moment in their lives is the category. So I'm thirsty. I'm entering a servo. I want a drink. Oh, there's a red one. I'll grab that. A servo is a service station. Sorry. Um, oh my gosh, the car is starting to make a weird noise. I need to buy a new car. What car should I buy? So the category entry point is the category. It's not your brand. Your brand has a job to get and can kind of get stuck in the mind when the category entry point is triggered. Yeah. The more you listen to the customer, the more you are going to understand what they want from the category, not what they want from your brand. The more you understand what they want from the category, then the more you are going to end up being just like the category. And so if you look at any established category, whether it be financial services and the banks you have, or whether it be the kind of Ford versus General Motors or whatever it is, you see homogenization. And that homogenization occurs because people have lost sight of their initial vision, what they stood for, what made them different. They're listening to the customer and they regress towards the mean of that category. So it makes them more and more like everyone else, which also then strips out value out of your business because you can't charge a higher premium because you're no longer different or special in some way. And so listening to the customer will make you more and more like everyone else. And it will also then strip out value out of your business. So I'm not just saying it to be controversial. I'm saying it because I think there's a real business need to stop listening to the customer.
Or at least to do it with some of the research aimed collection methods, right? You argue that those can motivate us or incentivize us towards short-term thinking if we're trying to, like you say, hack the buying experience. So in Coke's world, this was the war, right, within arm's reach whenever they're in the grocery store. That the problem with this kind of thinking is that we're going to become over-reliant on maybe their opinions, or we're going to fall prey to them saying how they wish they behave, but not actually how they behave. So we have a whole lot of things that can go wrong, but if we get stuck to data too tightly, we won't be able to see that, and we'll immediately, reflexively do what we're thinking they want, and then we find out that that's not right.
There's a whole lot of reasons why consumers are very poor historians of their own behaviour. They're very even worse futurists. They can give you good contextual, good information.
Right.
Somebody said the only good thing a focus group is good for is for designing a focus group room. So you can get people in a room and you can say, what do you think of this lighting? Oh, yeah, the lighting's pretty good. What do you think of the food? Oh, yeah, the food's not bad. But that's about it, right? You can't get them to predict their own behaviour, look back. But my first book, The Advertising Effect, How to Change Behaviour, boils down to, in order to change behaviour, you need to get people to act first and think second. And a lot of the strong kind of motivational techniques come back down to this thing called the effort paradox, which is the more effort you put into anything, the more you value it. And so whether that be childbirth, you kind of tend to value your child because that was it was literally a pain to carry it for 9 months and et cetera.
Yes.
Or whether it be going to IKEA and walking right through the long maze, buying furniture and assembling it yourself, right? It's all about the IKEA effect. And so it's all about the effort paradox. And so there's not going to be a consumer in the world who's going to say to you, I want to put more effort into something, right? So so if you listen to them, you're going to make things easy and more efficient. And that's not necessarily it's what they're going to say. but it's not necessarily what will build brand value for you. So what builds brand value is getting them to put a bit of extra effort into whatever it is that they're doing, being conscious of how they're consuming you. So at a really fundamental level, again, no consumer in the world is going to tell you how to build a brand, and then in fact they're going to say things that are the direct opposite of
Yes.
what actually is good for your business.
Yeah, we're back to the Malcolm Gladwell thing, and they want to be left alone, and yet we all know that things like advertising, interruptive advertising, are a mainstay of why certain brands continue to be market leaders.
Yeah. Well, we all know we know that, according to Byron Sharp and the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, mental and physical availability is what builds brands, which is basically a nice way of saying, be in their face and be around them always.
Yep.
And that's how you build a brand.
Just riffing though on that matter of being different for them. I mean, we should make sure that we try to do a little bit of that. It's helpful. You argue even all the way into the experience they have with servicing. I was stuck when you said about how call centers are outsourced, and it didn't dawn on me until you pointed it out that if brands are literally using the same handful of outsourcing providers, that those outsourcing providers, because they use aggregated scripts, are saying the exact same language when they get a call from, company A versus company B's clients. So no wonder the client feels like, oh, you're all the same to me. It doesn't make any difference. So we have to work against things like economies of scale sometimes to come out sounding a little bit different, don't you think?
100%. And I think that's a good example. You see a lot of brands now starting to vertically integrate. I think for that very reason, is that somebody somewhere is saying, right, my brand is being eroded because I cannot control all of the consumer touch points with a single unifying thought. And that's making my brand stand for nothing or become homogenized. And I need to bring that back into my brand, my customer experience ecosystem, if you like, in order to maintain a single coherent brand. And I think, I still like this kind of concept. I think it's a bit dated, but I love this concept that brands should be so differentiated that they create a category of one, so that you are the only category, or in the consumer's mind, you are a monopoly. And I strive for that as a bit of a nirvana. And if I take my own agency as an example, it's called Thinkerbell. Its proposition is measured magic, which is marketing sciences meets hardcore creativity. But then we employ thinkers and tinkers. We start each week with Measured Monday. We end each week with Magic Hour. And so we've changed the nomenclature of the agency world to deliver a holistic brand so people meet their thinker and so on, just in order so that our clients have a completely differentiated experience, if you like. And then we have a different way we deliver on our business model as well and so on. But again, it's just making sure there's a whole unified way of delivering a brand. But again, if I ask my clients, do you like using thinkers and tinkers, or should they be called account service people and creatives or something? They'll probably say, it's actually probably easier if we just use account service. You know what I mean? Because it takes a bit of grit, or it takes a bit of effort for everyone to get involved in that. Again, that's helping build the brand, if you know what I mean.
Yes, and this homogenization, that we're trying to get away from, it happens at both ends. You point out in the book that what you're trying to do is not necessarily grasp the whole market. Like in the Nike example, or Nike, their old argument was, well, who's Nike's target market? Anybody that has a pair of feet. We're not trying to really do that. We shouldn't have to do that. And with that, we can be making declarative statements that may be just the segment that we want to serve in our market. So you are going after, with Thinkerbell, people who value that mentor type relationship and with that magical element. You use the example in the book of cool kids, and you say if you think about it hard, and many of us don't want to go back to like our secondary school days, but the cool kids were kind of misfits. They were a little bit like we knew who they were because they were different. They did not meld into, the normal, or at least the big bell in the middle of the curve, right?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I mean, yes, they're differentiated. And they used to look different. And the cool kid doesn't look that different to anybody else anymore. They used to wear a black leather jacket back in the day. This is going right back in the day.
But they could look across a room at another cool kid, and there was some empathy and a knowing look cast between them.
Yeah.
Because they were willing to wear different clothes and be that way.
Your point is right though. So it's there can be a niche in the market, but is there a market in the niche? Is an interesting thought I've heard. Whereas it's quite easy to be differentiated and set yourself up, but maybe people just don't want that differentiated thing. So there is a balancing act, I guess, as well as kind of appealing to the category that you're in and making sure that you're not different enough from the category that you want to take market share from, and then being different within that category. So if you are a butter and people look for softness in butter, and you say, "Bugger,
Yes.
I'm going to be the only really, really, really hard butter." Well, that's great,
Right.
but I'm not really into hard butter.
No,
And then just coming back to the agency world, my previous experience was in an agency called Naked, which was quite a famous agency around the world that only did strategy and didn't really do execution. And at first, that was a really good idea. But all that happened was the other big agencies started to take strategy really, really seriously. And then that kind of closed the area of opportunity, if you like, for that brand to grow. And so it's kind of died. So it's a good point. You have to make sure whatever you kind of want to stand for, there's a market there who want to buy it.
Yes, there has to be a little bit of strategic thought put into it before we just stab out there. We're going to cover a little bit more about what it takes when we get down into the messaging of the brand, but we're going to take a really quick break first. I'm taking a moment talking about how you're managing in the world of GA4. To me, the new Google Analytics is more than just an interface. Its capabilities open up our entire funnel for analytical insights and for activating our marketing data. Now, most of you have installed GA4. That's great. To do this takes a bit more effort than that because you must configure GA4 with Google Cloud components, takes BigQuery, Looker Studio, services that API data back and forth, etc. And that's why I'm holding GA Fast Forward in-person events to do this over 2 days with people. A group of us work together to implement this new stack using our own company's marketing data. We come away with ready-made dashboards and AI-built audiences that we can leverage in our Google Ads. These workshops are running in Eastern Canada and across New York State, and soon in Pennsylvania and Massachusetts too. You can go now and see all the details by going to gafastforward.com, either with the number 4 in fast forward or all spelled out. Let's get back to the show. All right, Adam. So when it comes to how our brand is going to get the message out and which points we're going to put right at the top of our messaging pyramid, we can do it differently there as well. We don't have to simply do what our competitors are doing. Can you give us any good examples of where you've seen this at play?
I'm not sure if I'm answering the exact question, but I'll give you 2 examples of things I've been involved in, which I really like. The first one's Share a Coke. So Coca-Cola launched. They needed a promotion, and their promotion came up that we were going to put people's names on cans of Coke, and then we realized that we would have to, at the time, printing processes didn't allow for everybody to have a name on a Coke. You could only do about 150 names at a time or something like that.
Okay.
So the idea was developed to call it Share a Coke. So instead of buying a Coke with your name on it, you bought a Coke for the name of a friend and you gave that Coke to that person. That what I loved about that idea is that it was Coke asking you to give Coke to somebody else. So
Yes.
it's Coke asking you for a favor. It was Coke asking you to invest in you, and taking a bit of a social risk, saying, "Here, this Coke is for you because it's got your name on it," and that allows people into the brand of Coke rather than Coke talking at people. It was using the consumer as
Yeah.
part of the message. So that was
Unconventional.
unconventional and really successful. I think it's become the most successful campaign Coke's ever done globally, anywhere at any time in its history. The other example I really like is I do like these whole kind of experience and service-based brands where you've got so many different touch points to try to communicate a message. This is many years ago, but we had a hotel brand in Australia called the Art Series Hotels, and their proposition was art-inspired experiences. And so many years ago, we did a campaign called Steal Banksy, where we hung up a piece of artwork in the hotel, and we encouraged people to steal it. And if they got to steal it, they could keep it. But if they got caught, they had to put the artwork back up on the hotel wall. And so that went again. That went nuts in terms of people getting involved, people trying to steal it, people tweeting and documenting their attempts and so on. And then it actually got stolen by somebody. They got to keep the artwork, but we thought that might happen. So we had another Banksy. We put that up, and then the campaign went for another few months. So that kind of is, encouraging people to steal the artwork at the end of the day is kind of unconventional. That same
Right.
hotel chain had an issue with occupancy over the summer nights, and so we did another campaign for them called the Overstay Checkout, where you could ring up each morning, and if somebody wasn't in your room, you could stay there the next night for free, and you could keep on staying there until somebody was booked in your actual room. So you could end up staying for 3 weeks for free, as long as somebody wasn't in your room. And what that allowed the hotel to do was keep the rooms full during dead periods, but also then those people would eat at the bar and the restaurant and so forth,
Sure.
and get additional revenue.
Goodness.
So all we're doing was giving away dead airspace. So I like, there's some decent examples.
Not to mention it's got the viral element that the Coke does, because who's not going to mention at their next cocktail party that they spent a few extra nights at a hotel for free?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. They've all got talkability to them for sure.
These are things that take a little bit of guts to do, though. And we live in an environment where there are CMOs and they are reporting to boards, and they want to say that they have, enough political capital and that they have enough data to back what they're saying, and that they're just cocksure of how they should do things. I know you're not a really big fan of, CMOs that have that attitude. Can you tell me a bit about how you would try to redirect one that is, so sure of what they're doing, and maybe not letting the brand lead what's happening within their marketing organization?
Yeah, I think the original premise is interesting. I don't know if I necessarily agree with it. Like, I think what's starting to happen now, the CEO, the CMO used to be looking up at the CEO and the boardroom and going, what language do they speak? How do they talk about finance and so on and so on? What I reckon is happening more and more now in business culture is the CEO and the board are looking at the CMO going, that person understands brand. That person understands creativity. That person understands emotional connection. My finance person is starting to tell me about intangible assets and trust and reputation and things like this. And how do I build all of that kind of stuff more? So what we're seeing is the CMO is starting to be sucked up into CEO positions. CEOs are starting to be taken out of ad agencies who understand brands pretty well and put into big kind of corporations as well. So, I think I'm seeing a really, really rapid change occurring, where they are the creativity agitator, and it's kind of like the rest of the ideas ecosystem needs to keep up with those kind of avant-garde, and I should say learned CMOs, because they're not doing it because they just want to be creative. They're doing it because it makes good business sense, right? So we're all in the attention game. If you do something that gets a bit of earned attention, but it's a good enough idea that people want to spend time with and look at and pass on and all that kind of stuff, your brand's going to be healthier for it. So they're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, yeah. It's, I think, just the opposite of what you were saying with those campaigns that were great because they involved the audience's participation.
Sorry, Glenn. We just recently did a campaign with a company called Menulog in Australia, which I think is called Just Eats in the UK. I don't know if it exists in North America, but it's like the biggest. It's like as big as Uber Eats. It's a food delivery service. They had a massive campaign in Australia starring a woman called Katy Perry, who's obviously a pretty famous singer. Yeah, singer. I'm sure she's a slashy, but no, she's a singer. But in Australia, they launched the new big campaign in the rugby league, in our football kind of code, big moment, the state of origin. And they had Katy Perry singing this song over and over and over and over again in the state of origin. And everybody, the fans, the Twitter, everyone just said, "Oh my God, you're ruining the state of origin. Get this Katy Perry song off the air." And so the CMO and us kind of saw this as an opportunity, and we redid the ads for State of Origin 2 for the next match in this 3-match series.
Yes.
And the ad just started off saying, "Hey, we went a bit over the top on game 1 with Katy Perry. Sorry about that. Here's something a bit more your speed." And we just had Wendell Saylor, who's a famous rugby league player, brushing his teeth for 30 seconds. And then we just had another one of him just reading a book for 30 seconds. And then we just had another one of him just being asleep for 30 seconds. So there's completely boring ads just firing this icon. And then the Twitterverse went nuts about how cool this was. That won the ad themselves won a big $1 million free media competition that's in Australia and so on. But more importantly, the reason why I'm telling this long-winded kind of clunky story is the CMO lent into the conversation. The CMO apologized or said, "Well, we could have, that was slightly miscast there. We went really heavy on that ad in that game. We should have done something different." That is a modern CMO understanding their brand, Moments of Joy, and their consumer in terms of if they're pissed off, listen and do something about it and engage in the game. So,
right, and willing after they've gone on the first page of their playbook and seen what happens to chuck the rest of the playbook out the window and go somewhere else.
That's right. That's cool, and it's good to see. It's fun to see.
While we're on the topic of things like stadiums and spaces, you like to let people's imagination widen to those kind of areas, and that you say in the book you believe that your brand is actually making a statement with how you've gone to such lengths to either appeal to your base or maybe to curry favor with a new segment that you don't have. Tell me more about that, please.
I think the concept you're referring to is kind of signaling, where if you overinvest in something, at least you're saying to your constituents, your brand's going to be around for a long time. So stadium media is fantastic for small and emerging brands. As soon as you can get naming rights for a stadium, do it, because it makes your brand tangible. It makes it feel like it's going to be much bigger than it actually is. So I just love small brands buying stadium names. I think, it's always really cool when you see that happen. And suddenly everyone thinks, "Oh my God, who's that?" And then and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think the same can be said as well. And this is slightly self-serving here when I say this, but production values in an ad have a slightly intangible way of communicating that this company cares about this piece of this business. So therefore, we are investing heavily into this ad. I also, I used to be a psychologist working in a forensic setting, and I used to photocopy a piece of paper, and I'd say to the in books and stuff, and I'd say to the clients, here, read this, it's really good. But if you just give them a photocopied piece of paper and says, read this, it's really good, it's got no value to it, right? It needs to be, in that instance, kind of cut down, refined, maybe laminated, pulled out, given pressure. There you go. Here are some really important words that I want you to really read. And then that it just has much more weight to it because there feels like there's sunk cost and effort, and all the way the packaging of those words is being communicated. So whether it's buying a stadium naming rights, or whether it's pamphlets on the shelf in your small business that you want to give away that tells you about other things you can buy, just think about how that's being communicated.
Yes. So you are at this intersection with your background in psychology and, practice in the creative space. I, for one, am really listening carefully to you because you're telling me that there are things both at the conscious level and maybe even below that level that the buyer is detecting from what we are doing. A few that you give along those lines, love you to comment on them. One would be like sans forgetica. And then the other one is you do make the point in one part of the book where you think we should see if the types of actions that we're doing or looking at doing, like buying the naming rights to a stadium, are in line with like a Jungian archetype of, big versus little or whatever it is, that we should widen our focus to include these things because they are at play in the mind of our buyer.
That as soon as anyone says Jungian archetype back to me, I start to freak out and go, "Oh my god, am I that full of?" Yeah, you want to keep this PG, so I won't swear. But
Yeah, but whether it's at the quacky end or at the real science end, I guess what we're saying is there's more going on here than just words on a page.
There's more. That's right. That's right. And Jung, student of Freud, was neither Jung nor Freud were ever had a science, but they did used to package up information really, really well. And
yes,
Jung used to talk a lot about the shadow, and you can't be an authentic self unless you embrace your shadow. And that kind of concept is a concept through lots of different cultures. So Japan has the concept of wabi-sabi, which means beauty and imperfection. There's yin and yang, which is kind of two opposing forces coming together to create a greater whole. And in marketing, we forget about this completely. So in marketing, we try to present this kind of glib, superficial image of a brand all the time. And if it's perfect and glib and superficial, then that's what you're communicating. Again, just coming back to that example I gave before about the menu log thing, embracing your weaknesses or saying we made a mistake or saying we're weak in some way helps that brand appear authentic and whole and real. And so I'm a big advocate for brands that kind of look not only at the bright side of what they're doing, but also kind of the dark side or the unexpressed side, and
right,
the weaknesses or the fallibilities and stuff. And just to circle back 160 degrees to the beginning of the conversation, your strengths are often generic. So all beer has a crisp, clean taste. All hotels have something nice, have nice beds. All cars marry power and performance.
That's true.
It's often the weaknesses, which is where your true character lies, and it's often the things about you as an individual that you perceive as weaknesses, or that are used to get picked on at school or whatever for. That's where your strength of character can come from.
Yeah.
And actually, literally, if you have an ugly feature, that's how people do remember you. So if you've got a big nose, that's how people will remember you, by your big nose.
Exactly.
So you kind of need to. There's no other point but to embrace that, and that's where you can get differentiation. So that's the Jungian thing.
Yeah, for those old enough to remember, you're making me think back to Marty Feldman, a Hollywood actor, and I think it was VW that had him as a spokesperson, and their point in doing so was VWs, especially back in the 60s, were not handsome cars, and Marty Feldman was not a very handsome-looking guy, but they matched.
Yeah, right. I'm not aware. I feel quite ignorant, but that's exactly what. Yeah, it's a good example.
Yeah, right. What you're saying, and
yeah, Volkswagen
just it slows people down, right? It gets them off of that. I'm looking at another stock photo. Oh, wait a minute. What am I looking at?
Yeah, we have an inbuilt negativity bias as well. We pay more attention to negative stimuli than positive. We're hardwired for that. Of our 6 primary emotions, 4 detect negative things, 1 detects positive things, and 1 is neutral, surprise. And so, again, not only are you expressing something authentic about the brand, but literally you will get more attention for dialing up a negative.
I'll finish with a question that you give it oblique references throughout the book, but you do go into your pre-marketing days when you were working in the field of psychology. Do you feel that uniquely prepared you for what you're doing now? Are there some aspects of it that you are really glad for? Or are there some parts of it where, you think back and, say, oh my goodness, that was, I was seeing a part of humanity that I never want to see again?
So 2 answers to that. When I first got into marketing, somebody said to me, "Oh, this is so good. Isn't marketing just like psychology?" And I'd always think to myself, "No, marketing's just made up crap." And psychology had this whole scientist practitioner model going on. But as we've developed, marketing has taken it on the marketing sciences community and embraced it much more. So it's much more like a science now than it ever has been. So if I was a graduate psychologist now, I think the gap between psychology and marketing would be much smaller than it was when I graduated. The second thing is I did used to work in the prison system for many years, and what was amazing was no matter how heinous your crime, everyone wanted to see themselves in the best possible light possible. So they'll distort their cognitions to make sense of their behavior to the point that they couldn't see their behavior as harmful. They'll distort it to make it seem like a pro-social thing because they wanted to see themselves as good. So that really taught me the power of cognitive dissonance, that you have to change your thoughts and feelings to make sense of your actions, which is why I've been so interested for years and years in these things like the effort paradox and so forth, because as soon as we act, we change our cognitions to make sense of our action. And that seems to be the main modus operandi of how we go about things. Humans are not that strategic. We would like to think that we like plan, but we just find ourselves in a room running a podcast going, who am I? What am I doing here? What's going on? You know what I mean?
Yeah. But to me, that is why taking the brand and positing it as something that you are literally, setting in right in the path of a potential buyer and forcing them to either go around it or turn around and go backwards by making them do something that's going to allow their brain to do just what you said. And, if it's done well, it will have the intended effect.
Yeah, that's right. Put the brand in the way, give them something to entertain them for a while. Ideally, something so good they want to pass that experience on to somebody else, and then the business will grow. It's not that hard.
Adam, if people want to find out more about the book or what you do, where would you send them?
Oh gosh, this is going to get embarrassing, but I'll just send them to LinkedIn. I'll send them to either of the books, which is
Yep, I'll have them both in.
Okay. my Twitter profile at Adam Ferrier, or listen to my podcast, which is called Black T-Shirts, which is about the process of creativity.
Awesome. We will have links to all of those. And I'll finish by saying thank you so much for coming on and for at least giving us pause to think about what we're doing as we try to do the same for our markets.
Good on you, Glenn. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I hope the listeners enjoyed this and gotten something out of it that gave them an insight that they can use to make their funnel even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter at Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.